Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. We're going to have way too much fun today. Peggy is a returning guest. So, welcome back, Peggy. Just as a reminder for my audience, why don't you just share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, great. Great. Thank you again for having me on your show, Jeff. I am a wife, mother of 6, a farmer's wife, actually. We farm. I've been also a mental health provider for nearly 25 years. I focus on helping other people live their best life. I started a software company that a couple years ago that helped with farming. But right now I'm really focused on my podcast, Positive Solutions for Life, and also I have a quarterly workshops on goal setting and achieving, but I work really with busy entrepreneurs and professionals and really anyone who wants to enjoy their life more and get more out of their life by living their dreams and their goals and their purpose, and who really want to transform their mind and body from the inside out so they can truly, truly live, the life they desire.
I love it. And I'm just going to point out you're also in Nebraska. You're waiting to finish harvest. So,
Mhm.
in her spare time, she does run a full time farm. Now, my brain breaks when I hear 6 kids. I literally, I don't know, childhood trauma or something. I cringe at that. 2 was my limit, and I love both of them, but I don't think I'm not the dad that could have 6. I feel like that would be kind of like watching a pinball machine and trying to track the
Right.
ball.
I don't think it's too bad. Ours is spread out. We got 10 and 12, and then we have 19, 21, 25, and 27. So we kind of have like 2 families. And so the older ones have helped out with the younger ones. So I don't know what it's like when I see families that have 4 or 5 that are under the age of 8. I'm like, you're crazy, but this is my life.
I love it. I just talked to somebody this morning who had 5 under 5, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's
Mm.
just." And by the way, for my viewers, I told my wife that when the first child let us sleep through the night, we'd have the second, and he was colicky, so we waited 4 years and didn't sleep much. And then the second one came along, and neither one of us let us sleep, and I was like, ah. So that was it. I said no more. I love it. Now we're not going to talk about kids and things like that because so let's talk about wellness. And there's a lot of things I can ask you. And first of all, let's talk about your podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
Who is your ideal listener and who is your ideal guest?
So my listeners, really anyone that I like mindset. So a lot of my podcast has to do with, focusing on our thoughts, what we're thinking, how that protrudes into our life. And so I give a lot of tips and tricks and strategies to master the skills to optimize your life. So really it's a lot for anyone that is striving to get better, to wants to improve their life and really reach their full potential. So the discussion center around mindset, habits, productivity, time management, goal setting, a lot of different topics that all have to do with mindset. But as far as guests on the show, I really love to have people that are really out there to one, if they've got some books, but really are transforming people's lives. So just like anything that I like to read or do, they have different perspectives on that. And so any of my guests really have been transforming people's lives in different areas. I've had, somebody from real estate and mindset and goals and business to just other health people, somebody mental health. So it's kind of varies, but it all has the general purpose of just of challenging people to transform the way they think, to transform their lives.
I love it, and I'm going through my head, and I have a little Rolodex in my brain. There's a hamster that runs it, and I'm thinking of a bunch of past guests that must meet
Awesome.
Peggy. So
Yes.
that's one of the reasons I do this podcast is to connect great people with great people. One of the things I'm going to throw at you, this is totally unscripted, unrehearsed. This is Jeff and Peggy having a chat.
Yep.
Um, I love habits. We'll talk about habits.
Mhm.
One of my favorite topics is the Pareto principle, the 80
Oh,
20.
yep.
So, have you had guests in that space? Because one of the things I personally believe is a lot of this modern time management and goal setting and things. And again, you talked about 10x is easier than 2x or something.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, Who Not How is one of my other Bibles
Yep.
by the same two.
Mhm.
Um, but the reality is, we all get really busy and we don't stop and say, "Am I winning the right game?"
Mhm.
Um, so tell me about your experience with 80 20, and then we're going to talk about habits and some weird mindset things.
So yeah, so 80/20 is great because 80% of stuff, that you're doing is really kind of irrelevant towards, what your actual dream and goal is. And so the book 10x is easier than 2x with Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan kind of brings this to light and more like letting go of the 80%. And so one example that recently earlier this year I had was this whole transition that kind of um I got rid of like 80% of this is my health journey, basically. The beginning of the year, I wanted to lose 10 to 15 pounds. My daughter was getting married this summer, and I was like, you know what? I've been carrying this around for 27 years. I want to get rid of it. And the book 10x is easier than 2x with letting go of the 80% and, 10xing things really transformed a little bit of my thinking with the goal would be impossible unless. So I could get rid of this 10 to 15 pounds or so, but I was like, everything I was doing wasn't working. So I had to like rethink some things. So in order to do that, I had to think differently. So that statement, okay, it seems really impossible. I've carried this weight around for 27 years, right? Like, how- I can't get rid of it. It goes away and it comes back. But so I had that plan and really just thinking of it differently. So I hired a health coach. I had a done for me nutrition plan and exercise less, which means I got rid of like 80% of things I was doing, things I was eating, some of my habits. I was like, oh, exercise more to, do this. Well, maybe I was exercising too much and different things. So once that kind of got into play, the results were incredible. By the way, I had to like make my goal a little bit bigger and lose more weight than that because it works so well. But when you do get rid of the junk that's holding you back, and I say it's like a lot of distractions. So I haven't personally had somebody on my podcast yet specifically about the 80/20, but there is a lot of the mindset things we have to let go of in order for us to move forward.
I love it. And a friend of mine, he's a coach, and he has an official trash can, and everybody who comes into the room has to put their head trash in it. And he guarantees when you leave, you can take it with you. But I think I've studied a lot of 80 20, and I really truly I think that was. There's so many wonderful books. We're not going to get into the library thing because Peggy and I will be here all day and you'll all be
Right.
writing down. But when I read 10x is easier than 2x, I realized, and I'm going to just say this imperfectly, but at 2x, when you're looking to double whatever it is in your life, whether you're doubling your business, your
Mhm.
relationships, your fitness, you're carrying a lot of baggage with you. So it's heavy, and it's like I look at doubling, and by the way, I used to help people double their businesses, And I realized I was being a colossal jerk to them
Mm,
because it was like we doubled everything, even the really bad clients. You know, 2x is painful.
yeah,
Whereas the key to 10x is you as an entrepreneur, you as the leader, you pick your 20% where you're, he called it unique ability, you're best in the world at it. And then you find people and you hire them to be their 20%. 10x is easier because you're not carrying, I don't
yeah,
know if it's, I'm not smart enough to do the math, Peggy. If you are, you can, but I don't know if it's addition or if it's multiplication. But when you think about a business with 10 people and 10 people are doing 80% trash that shouldn't be in their world, um, that's a lot of wasted energy.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I think what I also think about when I think about 80/20 is the whole idea of the time management matrix, where the urgent and the important get mixed up. And that 80% is, a lot of that urgent stuff that's not important that we think is important, and we keep doing it. We hang on to it because at some point in our life, we were told we need to do this because it's going to help our business or, whatever. But that no longer serves us. And
Mhm.
so that stripping away that 80% that no longer is there, we have to continuously reevaluate our situation in order to go 10x. And sometimes that means we have to be kind of a jerk about letting things go that we need to let go of, you know, and
Just to
hopefully
be
not.
clear, Peggy, a jerk in someone else's eyes, not our own.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. Somebody else. It's all about perception,
Yep.
right?
Somebody
Yep.
else will take offense when you say no. And by the way, my little lesson this last year, when somebody takes offense when I say no, that tells me everything I need to know about them. I thank them, I release them to the universe, and
Yep.
I say, I wish you all the best, but you and I weren't meant to be together.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes they don't have an understanding. They're coming from their view, you're coming for yours, and it's not aligned. So it's okay.
I love that. Now let's talk about habits for a minute.
Okay.
And I feel like you're going to have a favorite book on habits. What is your favorite habit resource? And let's clarify, what do habits mean to you?
Well, habits are things that we do routinely that over and over again, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, but we do them over and over again. Sometimes we have to actually like force ourselves to do them, but they're good things that turn us in the right direction. So a habit for me, get up, work out, get ready. So, and drinking water right away when I get up. So there's some habits that put the ball in motion of how the rest of the day is going to go. So they're good things. There can be little things, something that we can do on a daily basis, or if they're not necessarily a daily routine, on a regular basis of weekly or monthly.
I love it. Now, your favorite book, please, because my people know we're going to talk about books. So why
Yes,
not just get it out of the way?
yes. Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Love
That's
it.
yeah.
And by the way, for those of you who are overwhelmed and you're complaining about having to read another book because Jeff and Peggy talked about it, there's an amazing video on YouTube. I'll try to find the link. There is some guy, he dedicates his life to summarizing books.
Ooh,
And
awesome.
I think it's
Mhm.
called Better Life or something. Anyways,
Okay, yeah, yep.
he does, I think the video is how to make your life 37.78% better or something. Like it's a weird title, but basically in something like 20-25 minutes, he summarizes the whole book. So if you're
Mhm.
too busy for a book, there is a video. But I can say I've read and reread Atomic Habits. Um, Peggy, I want your thoughts, but I would say by learning the good habits and by learning how to stack habits, I've reduced a lot of time in other areas of my life. So the book has given me time.
Yeah. I think any book can give us some, if we get a golden nugget or two from a book that allows us to, stretch our time and doing something else more productive, more impactful. That's awesome. I think, you know, relating some different words, part of it, I think, is like restating, like, I am this or I do this instead of like I have to or I should, kind of it's that mindset thing, I like that. So, we just have to retrain our brain on how we're speaking to ourselves and how we view something. And so I think that's a little bit, and I also love that the habit stacking, because if you are already doing something and you just add a little thing, it's more easy that you will actually do it.
Love it. And for those of you who are thinking this is not practical or whatever, I've taught my kids this. And Peggy, I don't know if you do. I'm a weirdo. I read books and then I go, how can this help make my life, kids' lives easier? And it's funny, but in the car, I ask my kids every day, what's dad's number one job? And they always repeat to make our lives better or to help us make our lives better. But what I do is I read books on business, I read mindset books. And then on the way to and from school, my 10-year-old and my 14-year-old and we discuss these big life changing things. And if you want an amusing day, get my 10-year-old to explain 80/20 to you because he gets exasperated when grown-ups don't get it.
That's
He
awesome. That is
Well,
awesome.
you'd think so, Peggy, but at one point he went to school and he said to his teacher, 80% of what you're teaching me doesn't matter. And I was like, that's a car conversation, not a classroom.
Yeah, those kids don't have much of a filter,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that young. Nope.
Whoops.
So that's
But
awesome though.
he does
They're learning the
understand.
point. They're
Yeah,
learning the point.
yeah. I feel his life will be better because that's the thing. I mean, I grew up on a farm and it was all about work ethic and,
Mhm,
how much can you get done? And it's like, I realized in harvest time, we got a lot less stuff done because it was like harvest or nothing. And it was
mhm.
like, why are we doing all this other stuff the rest of the year?
Good point.
And
It's not important during the busy time.
yeah. And that's, I think, a good, I love farming as the analogy for life as for business because everybody wants that instant gratification,
Mhm.
but you cannot have a harvest if you don't seed. And I feel like that's a Dan Sullivan analogy as well.
Oh, I think
Um,
there's many of those. I think the Bible references, sowing
yeah,
and then harvesting. It
yeah,
takes some time.
yeah.
And a lot of times, new businesses, and I'm going off on a tangent probably, so shut me off if I need to, but
Nope.
you sow stuff, right? And that immediate gratification is something that we're all like, our attention span is what, 5 seconds or less now. I mean, and we want
Ooh,
the
three.
reaping the rewards, but even businesses that start off, it takes a while to get that momentum going.
Yeah,
And you don't know the results of what you're sowing. What did I hear one time? 18 months if you know your business is going to, make it or not. But I think it's up to 3 years, and people are not that patient as they used to be.
yeah. And I think that's, I always bring in there is the sowing, there is the tending, and then
Mhm.
there's the reaping. And I think a lot of people just, I sowed, where's the reaping? And it's like you can't rush a harvest. I mean, you can tell the harvest, I'm really in a hurry, it's snowing, could we get this done? But the
Right.
reality is the crop's not ready, the crop's not ready. And
And there's a lot of extraneous factors,
yeah,
too, that you have to kind of learn. In the tending, there's always weeds that pop up. There's always setbacks. There's always roadblocks, that kind of get you off course. And
yeah,
so how to weather those, storms per se, and really go in for the long haul, because a lot of times I think people stop right before they're going to bring in the harvest.
yeah. That's too much work, I'm gonna skip it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
Oh
I'll go
gosh.
down to the store and buy something instead, and it's like I see a lot of unharvested. And by the way, I'm gonna share, when I was a kid, I used to listen to Disney books on record. Yes, I'm that old. I love the little Tinkerbell and you gotta turn the page, but one of the books that I loved was Johnny Appleseed, and I
Mhm,
feel like Johnny Appleseed's the modern day entrepreneur because,
mhm,
literally, and this is my memory from childhood, I always wondered why the guy did what he did, but he'd walk across, the United States planting apples, and he
mhm.
never once stuck around for the harvest. And
Yeah.
maybe I was way too literal, but I was like, why is this guy not stopping to harvest? Like, the guy was planting apples. He never got an apple.
Yeah. That's just interesting.
Yeah. So
Why did he
that's
ever
my
look back?
weird
We
little
didn't get the
analogy.
story. We didn't get the backs into the story where he walked back and
Yeah. Like, I'm sure he did, but Disney stopped it at
yeah, yeah.
and I think that's an analogy. Like, some entrepreneurs, they're willing to walk across the
Mhm.
country and they'll complain that they're not getting results. But if they just looked behind them, oh my God, there's a trail of apple trees.
Well, and I think that kind of that in my mind, I just went through the book 10x is easier than 2x, or not, no, actually The Gap and the Gain by Dr. Ben Hardy, because often I think entrepreneurs were looking for the next, next. Oh, this land, for Johnny Appleseed, well, this hasn't been planted yet in this area. So they keep
Yeah,
going and they don't look back and see the progress that
yeah.
they've making. And so they're always feeling like they're not enough, or they're behind, or they're never reaching their goals when they haven't really looked back and saw the progress and reaping the rewards of that.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, Peggy, because if one of my clients, they sold their core business this year, like in January, I think it was. And they took a few months to sort of process it. And then they spent the summer, and all they managed to do was create a website, create the content, and launch a new business. And in November, they're looking at November going, sales aren't where they should be. And I'm like, no, no, no. Let's first of all talk about the word should, but the reality is you're judging year to date by your success with your last business that you'd had for I don't know how many decades, but they've been in business a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
And then they're looking at their new business going, come on, give us results. We had to have the re
Yeah.
conversation and
And tending, and did they look
yeah,
back on the beginning year of their first business,
yeah,
and seeing how well did they do? They might actually be doing better than they did that very first
exactly.
year of their other business.
And I think that's going to take us down another conversation. By the
Yeah.
way, my viewers know there's no such thing as a tangent with Jeff, because really try to figure out where Jeff is going, and it's just random, seemingly. But I think gratitude, and this is where I'm a big fan of gratitude, because it reminds you where you've been, it
Mhm.
reminds you how far you've come, and it also reminds you that whatever you're going through today, 6 months from now, you're going to be grateful for having solved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just that whole sense, it brings the past, present, and the future kind of together with gratitude a little bit, because, the past, you could look back, like you said, see where the progress you've come. But also, I feel like in the present moment, you can find other people that are either worse off or better off than you, and you can find ways to be grateful. And like you said, in the future is like, oh, this little thing I know is going to be not so big, 6 months from now. And whatever lesson I'm going to pull out of this experience, I'm going to be so grateful for, because it has, will, transform me a little bit.
I love it. Now, I think you touched on this, but I want to actually ask the question
Okay.
specifically, and we'll worst case we repeat and just blame it on Jeff. But what is something you experienced in the last year that caused the biggest transformation for you? Because I think seeing how other people transform is huge.
Right. And I think a little bit of that, I think, I touched a little bit on, the weight journey, just getting healthy.
Yeah.
I have always envisioned myself as the person I was before kids. Like that image never some people look into themselves in the mirror and they see themselves bigger and, whatever. I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, well, who's that person? Because I'm really skinnier than that. I'm not, I'm not that person,
Yeah.
and so having that going, okay, I have racked my brain. I have done 75 hard, I've done intermittent fasting, I've done these different, nutrition plans, and I can't seem to keep it off, and that was the big goal. And so I think for transforming my thinking a little bit in that is not necessarily the scale weight. It's transforming from that losing the weight to releasing it, because one, if you lose something, there's an indication that you want to find it. Well, I didn't want to find that 10 to 15 pounds again, because I have done that numerous times over the last 27 years.
Yeah.
So I think that, just transforming, okay, I don't want to lose it. I just want to release it. So what's the difference? What am I really actually going to have to do? And I really had to sit down and going, okay, at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do these because these things have worked in the past. Well, those things aren't very exciting to me. So like when I've done something, I'm like, done, like tried it, did that, move on.
Yeah.
And so nothing
Next.
happened, next. Yes, I tried that. Okay. Nothing was too exciting. So I had to like, go, okay, what can I be different about this? Right. This seems really impossible. What haven't I tried? And so sometimes we have to think outside the box. Well, you know what? I had these thoughts about, well, I don't need a health coach. I read all of these health things, I read all these books. I know what to do. But there's that piece of a different piece, somebody else giving me a different outlook on it, holding me accountable, just challenging me like, well, maybe during this phase, like, don't exercise so much,
Hmm.
because your body is stressed enough by changing what you're doing that you don't need to do that. I was like, oh, less is more.
Yeah.
Literally was, and so I was like, so for the first 3 months, I did it on my own. I didn't do anything. So I hired a health coach, done for me nutrition plan. So they just gave me exactly what I needed to eat, and exercise less. In 1 month, I had like 10, 15 pounds gone. I was like, wow, that was pretty easy, but then I was like, oh, is there more? I'm like, okay, that was pretty easy. How can I do more? So then I go, okay, 10x it, like to make it bigger, like what would it be? Well, I'd have to lose another 5 to 8 pounds. And so I just kept doing that. And, I was able to get that down that weight. But not only that, I had the energy, like the brain fog went away. Like I was like up and ready to go. I was like, my husband's just like, geez, you've gotten more done in this last couple of months than you have, for a while. Well, thanks, but
Yeah.
I feel better. But it also, if I can do that, how can I influence the people in my household?
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's not just for me. And I think that part of the transformation of my thinking is I'm not just doing it for me. I'm doing it, to keep my husband healthy, even though I'm not making anybody, I'm not really changing anybody's diet,
Yeah.
I'm not changing what people are eating, but I'm just thinking differently, and doing some different things. So I changed that. So that has really transformed. And I've been able to keep it off, and everybody seems to be okay with, how things are flowing. Nobody's complaining that we don't have pasta that much, I think they're pretty sick of you zucchini right now, after going through all of that harvest. So we'll have to back
Love
off on that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, again, it's balance, and I mean, the thing is, I think, by you, and I want to pull that out because I think that's where I was going with the question.
Mhm,
By you making yourself a better human being, and by you accepting who you were and getting that help, you naturally raised the level of your family and your business, because I think that's a lot of people say, oh, I don't have time for that, and it's like,
mhm,
I can't count how many times I've had the conversation. If you don't have time to take care of yourself, the alternative is you die early and you
mhm.
literally run out of time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole, oxygen mask analogy, you can't help anybody else if you don't take care of yourself first.
yeah,
And that's a big thing. And it's like, okay, I gotta do that for myself, but it's not just for me. It's how can I transform and inspire somebody else, to do that. And then the ripple effect can be huge.
I love it. And I think that's one of my big pushing points for entrepreneurs. And by the way, all of this seemingly random stuff does come back together, because if we do 80/20 and we eliminate the things that stress us, if we build the habits that make us easy for us to get healthier, and if
Mhm,
we focus on the 10x versus the 2x, we have way more impact because, first of all, we are our best version of ourselves. We have more energy. I was recently sick with an unnamed disease I won't share, but it took me down for months, and it was like, I really don't like being sick. I'd rather be healthy.
Hmm. Yeah. And then when we have those experiences, we're like, okay, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to have that again. So how can I prevent that? So
Yep.
what are those little things that I can do regularly, but also how can I, view when things are starting to go south, catch it at the beginning of something starting. Like, I mean, my kids are like, probably, I'm finally, drilled into most of them the importance of sleep. It's like,
There's always one, right?
yeah, well, it was, the first two, the one needed her sleep, the next one was a night owl, and it was really hard because the oldest was one of like, I can't go to bed first because, my sister's got to go to bed because I'm the oldest. I got to stay up later than, but no, after umpteen years, they're, and now it's fun to hear them say, I have to turn in, I need my sleep, so there are some really good things that we can teach them early. It might
Yep.
take a while.
Well, and I would argue, as a parent, what better things can you teach your kids than, to take care of yourself? Because I think, I grew up in the 70s, and self-care was like almost a joke, or, there was a sign of weakness, you're one of those weirdos. And it's like,
Mhm.
um, you know, exercising was like, again, I grew up on the farm. Exercising was something city folk did because,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
my day was carrying things and walking miles and pounding fence posts and things. But I
Hmm.
think teaching our kids that self-care is so critical.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so they see us working out every morning. They, we're eating, we don't bring a bunch of junk. We don't eat concession stand food, there's some things that we push the water, all of those things. So hopefully, maybe when they're 25, they'll thank us for it someday.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, honestly, I know a lot of people. I have some friends that their kids live drive through to drive through, and no offense to them, but they're brats. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not kidding. At my one of my kids' schools, one of the parents, they literally go through McDonald's drive-through on the way to school. And these young kids, like I'm talking under the age of 14, they're drinking Coke for breakfast and they're eating greasy fried things, and it's a daily ritual. It's not a one-off.
Right.
Um, and I can't help but think those kids are going to look back and go, "Mom, what the hell?" Like,
Yeah. Well, I just laugh because when my kids get into college, I've got four of them already either through college or, are still in it. And they come back with, oh my gosh, like my roommate doesn't know how to do this, or like they don't know how to cook this, like they don't even know how to cook like mac and cheese, like, and I'm like, good, I'm glad that you can do that, and it's just some life skills that, to if they even want to try to eat healthier, where do they start if they don't have, the basics or that experience as they were growing up?
I love it. Now I could talk to you for hours, but I
Oh, I
promised
know.
you I'd get you back to your day, and I actually do have to go get kids from school. First things first, how do people connect with you? How do they, learn more about the podcast? Just get to know the amazing human that I know as Peggy. So how do people get in touch with you?
So I am on Facebook and LinkedIn, Peggy Meyer. You can look me up. Podcast Positive Solutions for Life. Instagram is Positive Solutions for Life as well. So I do have a YouTube channel. So just look me up or Positive Solutions for Life. Get a hold of me. Love to hear from you. Love to see what kind of questions and ask me questions.
Love it. And I mean it. This is a genuine conversation between friends. I love Peggy.
Mm.
She's amazing. Peggy, you're the expert at you. Is there something I should have asked you that I haven't yet?
Well, let's see. My gosh, where do we want to go with that?
Let's talk about your workshops.
Okay, let's go workshops. So I have a smarter to goal setting and achieving workshops that I do. And so basically what I help people with is to focus on, these are 90-day sprints, quarterly, 90 days. And I help people really focus on 1 or 2 goals that they really want to achieve in either their personal life or their business life related to their purpose or mission. And it goes through and helps them do, accomplish some different things like being really, smart. We've heard of SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, but this brings it a little bit further because it's just more than setting a goal and getting it measured in a time frame. I'm really helping people set themselves up for success through a system that really ensures actions are taken and they're measured, but we evaluate it because sometimes we take actions and they're like, well, that's not really working, and so we do have to reevaluate, revise, and it also cues being proactive about it, being, addressing some common pitfalls that stop people from achieving their goals, a lot of mindset stuff, time. Oh, I don't have enough time, or oh my gosh, it's going to cost too much money. I have nobody to help me, and all that physical and mental and emotional energy. Because if we're starting something, what's the ripple effect of you doing something different? We have to look at the resources we have, our energy, our motivation. And oftentimes on these, I tailor it towards the group that's in it. So if they need certain things, then we'll address those things throughout the 90 days. So discipline, how do I stay consistent with habits? I'm committed, 100% is easier than 98% commitment. How do oh gosh, I feel like I failed on this, so we rewrite the brain story on what that is, and like learning, there's always opportunities for learning in any experience that we have. So just bringing about that so that they can gain those tools to be successful. And even if it's not like, because we have this goal, oh, I want to hit, if I wanted to lose 10 to 15 pounds and I've only lost, 8.
I'm a failure because I didn't hit
I'm a
my goal,
failure
right?
because I didn't get 10 to 15 pounds. No, you're not, because look at the progress. Look at what you've gained, what you've learned, and now what you take forward for the next 90 days.
Awesome. Well, Peggy, I really appreciate your time. I know you're in harvest season, but I appreciate
Mhm.
you hanging out. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a blast.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.